everybody, and welcome to a video here on the Constructive Criticism YouTube channel. I'm Spencer. I'm the host of No Magic the Gathering podcast right now. I am here today to talk about Standard and do a deck tech for a deck that I think is pretty decent. And no, it's not Omnath. And kind of before the video, I just wanted to just quickly talk about what's going on in Standard. So, if you don't know, there is a very clear best deck in the form of a 4-color Omnath deck. There's a couple of different ways to build it. Last week, I actually was going to do a deck tech on that deck specifically, and I decided not to. The main reason is I just didn't want to deal with the toxicity that was going on around Standard that early in the format. I didn't find it fun. I didn't find it interesting. I had a deck that I had really enjoyed that I was playing with those cards in it, but I just wasn't really interested in having those conversations at that time. Today, I won't be talking about the Omnath deck. In fact, I think that it's very likely that Uro will get banned. Tomorrow, time of recording, I think is Monday. I would not be surprised if we saw a ban of Uro tomorrow. And I also think that while I am anti-bans in Standard usually, and we talk about it way too much these days, I think that Omnath should probably be banned as well. I think the card just does too much and probably needs it. But I don't think it will happen. I think it'll just be Uro. I don't think it will be enough. But if we are lucky, those do get banned and we get back to a place where people are willing to try things and innovate and not just complain, I'm here today to talk to you about a pretty cheap aggro deck that you probably have a lot of the cards for. With that being said, let's get into it. So today we're going to talk about Mono Red. And honestly, this deck is built right now with Lotus Cobra in mind. So keep that in mind as we kind of go through the deck tech. But let's go over this. So the first thing that we have is we have 4 Akuma Hellhound. Then we have 4 Fervent Champion, 4 Spikefeed Hazard, 4 Rimrock Knight, 4 Robber of the Rich, 3 Royal Eruption, 2 Shadow Skull Smashing, 2 Bonecrusher Giant, 4 Annex Harden in the Forge, 3 Tollbrand, and 4 Embercleave. We have 20 lands that aren't spell lands in the form of 2 Castle Embereth and 18 Mountains, but we do have those 2 Shadow Skull Smashings and those 4 Spikefeed Hazards. So obviously, as you can tell, just from the 4 Spikefeed Hazards and 4 Bonecrusher Giants, plus some additional removal in the form of Royal Eruption and Shadow Skull Smashing, Lotus Cobras are not long for the world against this deck. I do think that Lotus Cobra is a very powerful card, one of the best things that you can be doing in Standard. So even if Uro gets banned, I think Lotus Cobra will still be a part of the format, and you'll still want to be able to answer it and have quite a few cheap cards in your deck. If we just look at the overall curve of this deck, you can tell it really sits in that 1 to 2 mana slot. And so when you're on the play, you're able to really take advantage of the fact that your turn is taking turn 2 to play just a Lotus Cobra, things like that. Hellhound has been a little bit better than I expected. I saw some lists playing the 1-mana Goblin. That card is totally fine. I think you need to play a couple extra equipment to make that card good. Whereas Hellhound in a deck with 24 quote-unquote lands has been pretty good. You need aggressive 1-drops in this deck to really get through. Hellhound is also able to attack later to enable Embercleave. I've done that a number of times just to enable Embercleave, and it's really nice because your opponents are forced not to block it, because if they, do, then you're going to put an Embercleave on something else. So it does its job okay. It is not the greatest 1-drop, in a deck with no fetch lands and things like that, but I think that it gets the job done. Obviously, Fervent Champion, we all know that card's pretty decent. Rimrock Knight, we know what that card does. Robber of the Rich. Some of the new inclusions being the Spikefeed Hazards, the Royal Eruptions, and the Shadow Skull Smashings are all really nice inclusions. I think that Royal Eruption, I have kicked it. It does great lightning strike impressions. Obviously, it's not instant speed, but the downside isn't really that bad of being a sorcery, and you're able to, with 24 quote-unquote lands in the deck, you're able to kick this sometimes, and when you do, you're kind of happy that you're able to. Shadow Skull Smashing is often actually going to be the land side, but the number of times that I've just killed 2 things with this is pretty great. One thing to note, though, the first time that I cast this, I thought that it dealt X to both, but you actually do have to assign the damage of X, which is really, really important. So, know that when you're casting the spell, X is X. It's not X to X things. So otherwise it'd be really sweet and really good, and which is what I thought it did, and it doesn't. Spike Feed Hazard, surprisingly good as a card. Getting rid of X1s, I've killed the, what is it called? Is it Fanglehorn? That doesn't sound right. Tangled Florahedron is the card that I was thinking of. I have killed that card with it. You can kill Lotus Cobra with it. Obviously, it kills Hellhounds in the Mirror. It kills Fervent Champions in the Mirror. It kills Rimrock Knights in the Mirror. It exiles Uros if they play an Uro to make sure that it doesn't come back. The card has a lot of utility and also can just be played as a land. Really happy with this card's inclusion. Overall, the deck plays very similar to the Mono Red deck of last season that was really popular. The difference is that your 3 drops in the sideboard are a little bit worse. So the sideboard, we have 4 Red Cat Melees, 2 Embrace Shieldbreaker, 2 Thundering Rebuke, 4 Ashcloud Phoenix, 2 Akroan, the Akroan War, and 1 Chandra Heart of the Fire. Overall, the sideboard's been pretty good. Red Cat Melee, able to, kill big X-Force in the way. It's often that you'll bring in Thundering Rebuke to get rid of some of the other extra large things. Ember Shieldbreaker is something that you can bring in a couple of spots, and then Phoenix of Ash is typically going to come in place of times where you don't want Rimnock Knights, don't want all of your Bone Crusher Giants, things like that, just to get you a little bit more pressure. Been really impressed with this card, the resilience of it, things like that. It's obviously no Legion War Boss as far as power level, but it's still a really strong 3-drop that you're happy to put in to create some extra pressure and give your deck some resiliency. Overall, the sideboard is really basic. The main deck is super basic as well. And honestly, if you kind of look at the deck just overall, you don't have a ton of rares, mythics, things like that. You've got 2 mythics here, 4 here that you probably honestly already own. And then, the rest are kind of just, a couple of rares. You got 3 Tolbrand, 4 Bone Crusher Giant. Robber the Rich is a mythic. I thought that was a rare, so that's good to know. But if you had last year's Mono Red deck, you probably actually have most of this deck already and just need the hazards, the Skull Smashings, and the Eruptions. Shouldn't be that hard to put together, I think. Overall, the decks that I've been beating with this are Sultai and the Omnath deck. I do think, though, that the matchups against both of those decks are not amazing. I think that they're slightly in your favor, but not knocking it out of the park for the point where you shouldn't just play the Omnath deck. But overall, this deck can change 4 or 5 cards after imminent bans and be relatively happy. One of the things that I think that you should worry about with this deck specifically are mono green aggro decks that are gaining popularity. That matchup is horrendous. It is one of the decks that I have not even come close to beating with this deck yet. And I think that you would have to change the deck quite a bit to be able to pull that matchup into anything close to favorable for you. Other than that, I think that, Gruul is you've got the Spike Feed Hazards for their 1-drops. You have the ability to kill a lot of their creatures. The thing that you're really missing is something to deal 5 damage. So that's something to kind of think about. But other than that, I think the deck is good. Embercleave, really powerful card. And the deck's relatively inexpensive. It's something that you can get into, win some standard events, get your gold up, things like that. I've been really happy with this deck, how it's performed compared to, the rumors that aggro is completely unplayable in this format, I think are greatly exaggerated. I think we see that with Mono Green having some success, Gruul Adventures having some success, and I think this deck is not half bad, and can only get better if something like Omnath and Uro get banned. So that is going to do it this week for the deck. A little bit shorter, a little bit simpler, but I wanted to present something other than Uro that you could try out, jump into a queue with, and get some quick wins, get your gold up, and try and win that way. So thank you everybody so much for watching. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this deck, what you think the format is going to be about long term. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys on next time with another deck tech here on the Constructed Criticism YouTube channel.